Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench.
Hello, welcome back to Fighting on Film. Now, this week we are taking a break from our regular format. Now, if you're a long-time listener to the show, you'll know we do a thing called Show and Tell, where we pick a film that we've watched recently that, maybe perhaps we don't have time to do a full review on, or we just think, you know what, this might be better just talking about for a short period of time and maybe coming back to it at a later date. Sort of thing. You know what I mean, Matt, don't you? Exactly.
We want people to let us know on social media, etc.
Yeah.
Is it a film that you'd like to see us cover in detail? And
sometimes
we already know we're going to do them. I mean,
of course. But even as I'll mention later, sometimes the movies are better to talk about when you're comparing them to another film.
Yeah, there's context. Yeah.
There's context. Yeah. But we also are going to try something new this week as well. So on Twitter, obviously we do our one-word review, but this week we didn't think it kind of worked at Fighting on Film. Please do follow us. So I put up a hypothetical question, and in the middle of the show we're going to really delve into them because there are some right crackers in there.
It was a great question, and the responses are amazing. Actually, some really good ones.
So this will
really
be
thought about it.
Yeah, no, it really did. Yeah, this will be a new thing going forward when the one-word review doesn't happen. And our fourth hypothetical for this week is: what war movie character would you want to be roommates with or share a house with? And also, before we start, one last plug for the Machine Gun Corps Centenary event at the National Army Museum this weekend, coming on Saturday, 10 till 4. It's a Spotlight Saturday. So lots of things going on for the Vickers Gun fans, people in kit, special talks. Matt's going to be there giving a talk on indirect fire. I'm going to be there showcasing some of my Victoria Cross episodes.
You are.
There is a real Victoria Cross going to be there. Reginald Graham's Victoria Cross is going to be there, which is, when do you get to see a Victoria Cross that close ever? It's going to be really, really interesting.
Absolutely.
Also, it's free to the public. So
it is.
What more do you want? If you're in London on Saturday, please come and see us. You get to see Rich too. Friend of the show. Come say hello. Yeah. And just lastly, before we dive into Matt's film, because I don't actually know what it is this week. Before we dive in, we just recorded our guest spot on History Rage, that podcast where they get people in and you have a gripe, like a thing you don't like about a certain subject, and you get to wax lyrical on why you don't like it. It was quite a cathartic experience.
It'll be out in a few months, and I tell you what, we'll keep our gripe, our rage secret.
We will
find out when the episode drops, and we'll be sure to let you know when that does as well.
Exactly. And if you don't listen to History Rage, please go and seek them out, because Paul and Kyle are great at what they do, and there's some good guests on there. You've had people like Peter Caddick Adams on, and Alex Churchill, Robert Lyman, yeah. So please go and seek them out. If you have, send FOF love their way. So Matt, without further ado, what is your show and tell film for this week?
It's Dog Soldiers. I literally watched it again yesterday. Last night.
Amazing! I tell you what, I've only seen snippets of it. Never seen the whole thing.
You've never seen it all the way through? Okay,
no.
Well, it's a cult classic. It really is. It's a really interesting movie. So, I mean, spoilers slightly. It follows a section of British troops who are on an exercise in, I think it's the Highlands in Scotland. And it goes through bar. They're set upon by a pack of rabid wolverines, wolf people. And it's great. It becomes a little bit of a Last Stand movie. They occupy a farmhouse and they have to try and fend off the wolverines. Directed by Neil Marshall, who went on to do a couple of other films. I think he did, what was it? It was Centurion, Hellboy, Descent,
wow.
A couple of others he's done.
Descent, shit scary.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. And it's a horror movie with a action military bent.
Yeah.
British squaddies. And it's a really cool premise, and there's lots of cultural nods and little bits throughout there. There's lots of references to stuff like H.G. Wells, Aliens. Zulu gets mentioned naturally. The Evil Dead, of course, almost the people in a farmhouse or shack in the woods, and scary stuff happens. It fits.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's got Sean Pertwee is in there. He's the section leader, the sergeant. Has some great lines in it throughout. And then there's a really solid little English cast from early 2000s. The other standout being Kevin McKidd from Trainspotting and Grey's Anatomy and stuff like that. It's a really enjoyable movie. You get to see SA-80s. I think they're SA-80 L-85 A1s for a bit, and then they kind of take the weapons from a dead Special Forces SAS squad. So you get MP5s and cool stuff like that. Blink and you miss it. I think there might be an HKG-41 in there.
Right. Yeah. So I remember it. But every time we do a horror movie for October, people always go, "Oh, you could do Dog Soldiers. You got to do Dog Soldiers."
Yeah,
so
people love it. It's a cult classic.
So maybe
there's a bit of humor in there, so it's funny.
Yeah. I've always heard great things. I've seen the section where I think they try and fill a werewolf full of like MP5 9mm, and I think it doesn't die, does it, or something, and it keeps coming at them. Yeah, I've seen that bit. And I know Sean Pertwee's in it, and I do love a bit of Sean Pertwee, I must admit.
He's great in it. He's got some great lines.
Yeah, I'm not, to be fair, listeners, I'm not the biggest horror movie fan.
Nor am I really. I mean, I like a few of them. I like the classics, especially.
Something like this, I think I watched like an in-depth review of this on YouTube a few months ago, because it just, I just enjoy learning about how movies get made. And I know the way they made this one, they were quite respectful to they wanted to get the soldiers right and things like that, and wanted to get the kit as good as they could, things like that.
Yeah, the kit isn't bad. It's not perfect, but it's good for the budget, Like,
of course,
$2 million budget. Made $5 million, launched Marshall's career.
Yeah, exactly. Good. Proper cult classic. Maybe we'll have to try and seek him out. Maybe get him on in October if we could. That would be really good.
Oh, that'd be really fun, actually. That'd be great. Yeah, or Sean Pertwee.
Yeah, someone who's someone who's involved, that'd be fantastic, because it's one of those movies where you just want to learn why. How do you get something like that on screen? Because it's we always do like there's World War II zombie movies, but how many like modern sort of werewolf sort of type ones are there?
Yeah, and I mean the good thing about this is that the plot's good, it's clever. The practical effects in it are good. Like you can
the
see
dialogue
it's a dude in a wolf suit.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, but it's still scary. It's nicely shot, great lighting and stuff, and it's just it's a fun movie. I hadn't seen it in quite a while, and it was on like Film 4 or something. Okay. And I just threw it on and sat there and watched it with my mum, because we were on a break and on a holiday, and on the drive home, my mum was like, I enjoyed it, but there were plot holes, weren't there? And I was like, yeah, there are definitely plot holes.
Get Mrs. Moss on the pod. Mrs. Moss, get her on.
Yeah, Sue on for the for the in-depth Dog Soldiers breakdown.
Sue's plot hole corner.
Yeah, right. She'd love it. But yeah, it's a good movie. I definitely would recommend it, and it'd be a fun one to do for, as you say, for Halloween in October.
I think it would, if the schedule works. And we always try and get
you haven't seen it either, so that's fun. Yeah,
not all the way through. I've seen clips. It's just one of their movies that you always seem to miss. Or you turn on the TV and it's like 3/4 of the way through it, and you're like, oh, I can't start it now because it's not fair on the movie
for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You've definitely got to see it from the beginning.
So
parts of it do not make sense.
I think you might have inadvertently, Matt, picked our October film.
Maybe. Yeah. Let us know on social media at Fighting on Film. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah.
Snapchat. We're on everything.
I know it got a good last year. I think I ran a war movie, horror movie thread.
TikTok, rolling.
And I think TikTok as well. Do follow us, actually. Fighting on Film on TikTok. Help us grow that. That'd be great. But yeah, I think I mentioned it, or someone mentioned it in in the thread I did at Halloween last year, and it got a really good response. So yeah, we'll definitely. I think we'll try and seek someone out for that. So watch this space, guys. As all I'll say. So moving on to the fourth hypothetical.
We haven't made a jingle yet.
Yes, there may or may not be a jingle. Yeah, so I thought, as a change of pace from the one word review, because we don't go as in depth on these episodes, really, I thought just throw a fun question out there, something for people to engage with. And my God, the response. I think we're at nearly 70, 65 responses on it. I mean, it was really fun. There was some absolute corkers in there. I'm really sorry if we don't get everyone's in. But the question was, you heard at the top of the episode, but I'll remind us all now, is what war movie character would you want to be roommates with? And obviously, before we get into yours, Matt, is there a war movie character you want to be roommates with?
Ooh.
Slash you know share a house with.
I know. It's tricky, isn't it? I feel like Oddball would be a great housemate. It'd be a mess.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah,
it'd be a mess, but the vibe would be sweet.
The vibe, man.
And you know, we'd have the best parties.
Yeah, the wine and cheese would just be immense.
Yeah.
And then
every day's a beautiful day.
Every day's a beautiful day. Household. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. And if your car breaks down, it's got a team of engineers.
Yeah. I'll just take the tank.
Just take the Sherman. Yeah. Hey, baby, I'm going to co-op. You want anything? He would just make you like hero sandwiches every day.
Get me a bottle of the Hawk and some hummus.
Yeah, exactly.
Please, Oddball. That'd be great. Thank you.
He'd be like, you haven't paid the bills, Oddball. What have you been doing? Oh, you need some cheese, catch you some rays.
I know you're good for the money, but come on, this is
yeah, exactly.
Get beyond a joke now.
Yeah. I was thinking about this one, and I thought I would probably have even though he'd be an absolute bastard, I know that everything would be in its place, and I probably wouldn't have to lift a finger very much. I would have Bennett from The Cruel Sea, Stanley Baker's character.
You would just eat sausages all the time. Though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small price to pay for him to be probably the most prim and proper bloke.
It'd be like, what's for tea tonight, Stan?
Yeah,
Bennett, well.
Snorkers again.
Have you not seen the menu on the wall there? It's just Monday, Friday, like every day Snorkers. And if you don't say good when he tells you, it's yeah. But then I wouldn't. But this is why I wouldn't want Ericsson, because he'd end up annoying me, and I'd call him a bloody murderer, and then it'd be a carnage, wouldn't it? You think of the rows you could have. Yeah.
With Ericsson. Over to the fourth listeners. So I'm not going any particular order. I'm just picking some out. So firstly, we had AD Bond, who says Skipper, Robert Shaw's character in Battle of Britain. Lovely house, and check out that doorbell. And that got a few likes.
Good reference.
Very good, yeah. And I replied as the fourth Twitter, and I put chunky roll necks for the winter, and Skipper hates energy bills. So, Then we had Thomas McCall, who's one of our patrons. Nice to hear from you, Tom. He said Colonel Faulkner, Richard Burton from the Wild Geese, he'd get the drinks in, tell you all about his interesting mercenary adventures. How did he get out of Rhodesia to London, etc. And would really take.
I wouldn't want to go on holiday with him though.
No, probably not.
Yeah, imagine catching a flight with him.
Yeah,
hit or miss whether you make it, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. I've got, yeah. He'd be like, it's a dodgy Dakota, but it's cheap.
Running to the gate with Colonel Faulkner is not something you want to do.
Sandy.
No.
Alan. But then he also added, would really take the hard decision to machine gun you if the heating bill was too high. Rest in peace, Rofer. Yeah. Then we had David Current, who said Sister Diana Murdoch from Ice Cold and Alex. He said she can down a pint and look after you when you have the sniffles. What's not to like?
Yeah,
I mean, that's fair. That's a good one. We also had History Book Chat, Books to Cover on Twitter. He says, Hendley the Scrounger, cupboards would always be stocked up, including plenty of loo rolls should there be another pandemic. I like that.
Solid choice.
Solid. Dr. Grant Harwood said, Stephen, the ship's surgeon from Master and Commander. I mean, you know from watching that film who'd be a great roommate, smart guy, organised, plays an instrument, witty banter at meal times. Just need to put up with some strange pets.
Oh, God, yeah, I love that movie.
Then we had Steve Metcalfe, Esquire. He said, Captain Anson from Ice Cold and Alex, a bit of a temper, but good at dealing with the cold callers. Great fun down the boozer. Then we had Richard Burton's character from the Where Eagles Dare. He put Richard Burton, he'd be very handy if there were any situations involving a cable car. That was from Alexandra Wood.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
It's a good one.
He'd be great. He'd be great at, like, you know, you sat watching like a whodunit, like on like maybe like a Scandi whodunit, and he'd be just there with a little book going. No, I know. I would like episode 1, end of episode 1. He already knows who did it.
Yeah. Also, he's got a great Parker collection for when it's cold in the winter.
Yeah.
Styling. Yeah.
He get irate with me just borrowing his jackets all the time. Surely.
Yeah. Then we had Lost in Translation, and he put the entire cast of The Odd Angry Shot and put Welcome Patrol 22, specialists in arson, murder, and drinking. Well, you know, you save on rent because there's quite a few of them.
Yeah. I mean, God help when it rains, like.
Yeah. And then Robert put, as a reply to that, he put, they'd empty your fridge in 10 minutes. And Lost in Translation replied saying, true, but the chats would be amazing and entertaining, and at least I'd know when it was raining. Then we had Mark and Sam the dog on Twitter. They said, Colour Sergeant Bourne, and he bullet pointed this, organised, firm but fair, compassionate when needed, will bayonet burglars. That's a good one. And Colour Sergeant Bourne's there for Zulu, if any of you needed reminding. Probably don't. And then Dean Barden said, Colonel Steiner is my pick. Will look after his housemates first, and he's a gentleman. Also looks and sounds pretty cool. But then he might go mad and take over the town and hold everyone in the church if he has one of his moods.
It won't be a dull Sunday, will it? You know,
it wasn't. No,
when he does.
Yeah, and Dennis and Smocks all round. I mean, you can't complain there.
Yeah,
you know. Then we had Ian Lambert. He said, crap game from Kelly's Heroes. He might moan about carrying stuff, but he knows everyone and can acquire everything.
True.
That's a good one. Andy Hart put Sean Connery as Major General Roy Urquhart. Any canvassers, Halloweeners, or carol singers come to the house, and it's blam for the nearest window.
It'd be great too, because he'd just live in the loft, wouldn't he?
Yeah, you'd have the whole house to yourself.
You'd have the whole house.
Can I can't do a Connery. I won't even try. But like, can I come down yet?
It's a rare episode when Rob doesn't try.
I didn't try. I didn't want to try. He'd be like, "Can I come down yet?" He'd be like, "No, German's still in the street. Don't look out. Don't look out." He'd have to work from home though, wouldn't he?
He would.
He'd rip the internet. But then Dennis and Smocks again, and Brown in High Powers.
Exactly. So, true.
Richard Bramfit put Irina Demick's character, Janine, from The Longest Day, a feisty French woman. I'm so shallow.
Well, at least he knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Good choice, though. Good choice.
Yeah, good one. Rob Shipman made me laugh. He put the guy that brings Sean Connery a brew in A Bridge Too Far. Can't go wrong with a housemate that brings you a drink, even when you're having a bad day.
That's very true. Very true.
I think that one might win. Who wouldn't want a little suppleton to do all the annoying jobs?
Well, I mean, as we always say, there's no stand to until we've had a brew.
Yeah, very true. Very true. We had Henry S. He said, have to go senior service for this. You know, Lieutenant Commander Erickson would always do right by you, and the mess bills be paid on time.
See, he put up with Erickson. You might not, but he would.
He did. I might not. Yeah, I just can't. I can't forgive someone who, you know, even though they're attacking a submarine, runs some geezers over. It's a bit mean, you know.
Well, that's a discussion for when we finally cover the Coral Sea.
It will be, won't it? It will be, won't it? Pete the Paint said, Gunny Hartman, you just know it would be a tidy house. And
but it'd be a bloody nightmare.
I know. 80 Bond
I wouldn't
reply.
mind living with him in his character from Siege of 5 Ace Glory.
Yeah, I
That'd be
wouldn't
fun.
mind that. He's a bit less hardline in that.
Yeah, he's
Um,
hardcore, but
he's
he's a laugh.
hardcore. Yeah. And then AD Bond said, and if you didn't make your bed properly, it would be out on the lawn, which that's very true.
It would.
And then finally, sorry if we missed any of them out, but we have Adam Brown, and he said Robin Williams as Adrian Cronauer from Good Morning Vietnam, because there'd be no need for an alarm clock. Simple.
And he'd always have the peak tunes too.
Exactly, writes itself. It's fantastic. Yeah. So if we, whenever we do a show format that isn't a big review, we will do a FOF hypothetical. So, and equally, if you come up with some good ones, message us, DM us on the Twitter, and we can add them to like a little list. So we can have some good ones. So yeah, that'd be great.
And that brings us nicely to your pick for this week's show and tell.
Hello, I'm Al Murray, and you're listening to Fighting on Film, the world's #1 war film podcast.
What have you been watching?
So this week, well, I say this week, it was a couple of weeks ago, I went down a weird sort of rabbit hole, and I was actually looking for some Vietnam equipment that I wanted to add to my airsoft impression, because I do Navy SEAL Vietnam era airsofting, and I was looking at some Erdl or something, and I came across a couple of rare Vietnam films. I can't remember the name of the other one off the top of my head, but the one I did find through this rabbit hole was and this isn't a Vietnam War film, but it's set in Vietnam. It is Jump into Hell from 1955. That's very hard to find. Yeah, but you can get it on DVD. And it's a 1955 film, as I said, but it's about Bien Diem Phu. And it was very interesting because it's the first movie that's made about Bien Diem Phu, like a narrative movie, but it comes out a year after the actual battle in 54. Yeah. But it's a weird one. It's a Warner Brothers production, so it's Hollywood.
It's American made.
American made, yeah.
Right.
Stars Jacques Serenas and Kurt Kasner, and who he was in Farewell to Arms and 55 Days at Peking.
Okay.
But the cast is kind of made up of foreign actors,
right.
Because obviously the volunteers that went into Indochina, some of them were German, South Vietnamese, French. And the cast reflects that. So there's one guy who's ex-Africa Corps, as he's jumping in. But
that's a common thread on some of those early ones. Like 317 Platoon's got a guy that was ex-Wehrmacht, I think.
Yeah, I think they had a lot of like mercenaries going out there. Because some of them are Foreign Legion as well, I think, out there.
Yeah.
So it's an odd film. So I wanted to perhaps do a whole episode on it. But after watching the movie, I think it'd be unfair to do this one and then not talk about 1992's Bien Diem Phu. Because so Paul Schoendorfer's 1992 Bien Diem Phu is, for me, perhaps one of the finest foreign war films ever put to screen. It's the scale is fantastic. The cast is amazing. You've got Donald Pleasance playing a journalist speaking fluent French throughout. It's such a beautifully shot film. Whereas this film is completely opposite everything that film is. So in 92's Bien Diem Phu, if you haven't seen it, it's very anti-colonial. It's putting a mirror up to the French in Vietnam. It's clearly anti-war, and it is an anti-war movie. But this one is really oddly jingoistic for the time. Like, it's as if no one's learned anything from trying to hold on to colonialism, because it seems to all end in tears. In the 50s, you've got Malaya happening, you've got Borneo's just about to happen, the collapse of the British Empire is going on as well. And Hollywood comes out with this really oddly toned, jingoistic war movie that seems to be trying to say more about Western ideals and colonialism than anti-war sentiment, and trying to keep hold of something that isn't yours. It's a really odd tone. Right. But that, I don't think that it doesn't help the movie either, that it's too concerned in its main character's backstory and trying to make you care for these people. Whereas obviously with time has allowed us to learn a lot more about the Viet Minh and the VC and the history of Vietnam. where they're ostensibly fighting for their own freedom half the time. Until 1975 and the Vietnam War actually ends. And you watch something like this and you think, well, if this is how Hollywood see the Indochina War ending, there's no wonder that Vietnam went on to be what it became when the US got involved. It's just a very interesting movie, but then interesting movie culturally. But then when you actually watch the movie itself, as I said, it's more interested in the characters. It doesn't show enough of the battle. Like it gives you the main beats. You've got the outposts with the ladies' names. You see the commander. Instead of saying how embittered and battled they are, he keeps going about, oh, we'll fight to the end and all that. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake, you never feel like the battle's lost, even at the end where everything's going tits up. You never feel like the Viet Minh are they don't give the Viet Minh anything else. Like they don't show them as like an effective fighting force, because obviously why
they don't
would
give
they?
them the credit for the loss
Yeah,
that they're inflicting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But why would they? Yeah.
Well, exactly. It's interesting, they're making a film about that conflict where the US was already heavily invested, with materiel terms, support for the French. So, I mean, it's unsurprising that it's jingoistic in tone.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. It sounds really interesting. It sounds like one that you need to watch to get a greater understanding of that early Indochina conflict.
Yeah, and especially because there aren't that many.
How it's portrayed.
There aren't that
as time goes on,
and there aren't that many portrayals of it either, so it doesn't help. I would obviously just say watch Bien Diem Phu first, and then watch this and see how they differ. Because when the movie's doing set piece sequences like battles and men shooting at each other and running into trenches, it's not bad. 50 standards, it's decent. Very Pork Chop Hill-esque sort of action. That's how I would sort of say. But the scale isn't there. So there's not guys coming down off hills. There's not guys going up hills, fighting patrols, things like that. There's nothing like that. You've just got to take their word for when they're in different parts, because you never really gauge where the hell you are half the time. Whereas in 92, you get these beautiful landscapes and these beautiful sequences where you can clearly see where people are. And there's some good stock footage cut in as well of the time. So the opening of the movie is really good. You get like a strafing run from a French fighter, but the footage of that is actual combat footage from Bien Diem Phu, and that cuts in really nicely. And that's the opening sequence is really strong. You're like, oh wow, I'm going to get this really cool Last Stand movie, and it doesn't happen. That's the most annoying thing about it. And then in terms of kit, quickly, you've got M1 carbines, M1 Garands. There's a really interesting mocked up DP-28, which I think might be mocked up off of a Lewis gun. And then all of the French soldiers are in Duck Hunter camo, which is interesting because I don't think Hollywood at the time had quite a good back catalogue of French uniforms. So it is just what they can cobble together.
Yeah, if they weren't like 1920s Legionnaires, then I don't think they
had much
it's just interesting. Kit, did they?
It's interesting to see how they're portrayed. I mean, I know they did wear Duck Hunter out there, but it's interesting anyway, and it's nice to see a lot of M1 carbines always. I think they're quite inherently linked to that conflict. But yeah, I mean, unless you're very into that period of history, I wouldn't say it's an instant classic, but I would say it's worth rooting out if you want to see how that war is portrayed on screen, because it is very interesting how a movie made in 55 is very pro-war, and then pro-Vietnam, pro South Vietnam, anti-communism. That's what it is. That's that movie. It really is. Because it's weird. It does a thing where at the start it likens the French battle at Bien Diem Phu. It likens it to Dunkirk and things like that. It's a very odd tone. It's interesting to watch just for that. But if you want a greater understanding of how that war evolves, then this is one to start off with, and then go on to things like Green Berets, Hamburger Hill. You can follow that whole war on film, it would seem.
You can. That's really interesting. There are not many wars you can say that about, actually.
Yeah, and that's my pick for this week. If you can find it, it's interesting, but I would wait until we cover Bien Diem Phu, because I think it'd be interesting to compare them at points.
Yeah, I would like to watch it, actually, so I probably will seek it out, even if before we get to Dien Bien Phu. 92. But it sounds interesting. even if it's just for that whole context of,
Yeah,
like
it's good.
anti-communist, House of Un-American Affairs stuff going on,
Yeah,
post-colonialism. Just sounds interesting as a bit of a cultural touchstone for the depiction, probably one of the earliest depictions or the earliest depiction of that war.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and surprisingly, for such a huge battle there and such an important battle in French history, there's only two. Seems to be two movies on it. And then obviously there's a third Indochina War movie with 317 Platoon by Paul Schoendorfer again, which we need to see because we've seen clips of that movie.
Looks so
and
good.
It looks, it just looks so good.
It's a matter of tracking down English subs.
Yeah,
for it.
We're having trouble. If anyone out there has a version they wouldn't mind letting us see, we'll be very happy to take that off your hands. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it for this week.
I think so. Again, thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to leave us a review on the various podcast channels that you listen to the show on. Follow us on social media. We're on, I think I said Snapchat earlier, but I don't think we are. I don't know why I said that. But we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now TikTok as well. Rob's smashing it over on TikTok with some great content.
And so I'm going to start doing some different things on TikTok. So you might want to get over there because it's going to be stuff that is podcast related, but not necessarily about the films.
It might be the straw that finally breaks my back and makes me get TikTok. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to check out fightingonfilm.com. Check out the rest of our episodes and our back catalogue. And who knows, you might have a fourth binge.
Thanks for listening, guys. And hopefully we'll see some of you at the NARM next week.
That'd be great.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.